Hello, this is Pretty John P. from the Department of English, Carmel College, Mala. Today, we are going to deal with Claiming an Education, a speech by Adrienne Rich. So, let me give you an introduction to Adrienne Rich, or Adrienne Cecil Rich, was born on 16th May 1929 and died on 27th March 2012. She is named to be the renowned poet, essayist, and political activist. She defined herself as a woman, lesbian, and a feminist. She was born in Baltimore, USA in 1929. In the final year of her graduation, she won the prestigious Yale Series of Younger Poets Award for her book A Change of World in 1951. Her second collection of poetry, entitled The Diamond Cutters, came out in 1955. In the tumultuous 1960s, she became a great champion of the oppressed by standing for the rights of women and the sexual minorities, besides her participation in civil rights movement and anti-Vietnam War protest. She was called, to quote, one of the most widely read and influential poets of the second half of the 20th century, and was credited with bringing the oppression of women and lesbians to the forefront of the poetic discourse. Her Snapshots of a Daughter-in-Law, published in 1963, and Leaflets, published in 1969, are testimonies of her politics. Adrienne Rich won the 1974 National Book Award for Diving into the Wreck, which was published in the year 1973. The questioning of patriarchal assumptions, the need for change, and the power of the will were the themes in her early writings until the publication of The Dream of a Common Language in 1978, which argues for a common women's language, a concern of most feminists all over the globe in the 1970s. Due to her differences over the policies of the US government and President Bill Clinton, she refused to accept the prestigious National Medal for the Arts in 1997. She died on 27th March 2012 at the age of 82. Her political belief is best manifested in her comment, "All human life on the planet is born of women, the one unifying, incontrovertible experience shared by all women and men is that months-long parade we spent unfolding inside a woman's body." So, let's move on to the present speech, that is Claiming an Education. The speech, titled Claiming an Education, was first printed in the magazine The Common Women in 1977 and eventually reprinted in the collection On Lies, Secrets and Silence, Selected Prose from 1966 to 1978. Claiming an Education is a convocation address given by Adrienne Rich, the American poet, essayist, and feminist, to the graduating women at Douglass College in New Jersey in September 1977. Her description of the necessity of removing the sexism in universities and her perspective on it is described in her speech in Claiming an Education. So let's move on to the text. First paragraph. For this convocation, I plan to separate my remarks into two parts. Some thoughts about you, the women students here, and some thoughts about us who teach us in women's college. But ultimately, those two parts are indivisible. If university education means anything beyond the process of human beings into expected roles through credit hours, tests, and grades, and I believe that in a women's college especially, it might mean much more. It implies an ethical and intellectual contract between teacher and student. This contract must remain intuitive, dynamic, unwritten. But we must turn to it again and again if learning is to be reclaimed from the depersonalizing and cheapening pressures of the present day academic scene. So in this first paragraph, Adrienne Rich planned to separate her remarks into two parts by saying some thoughts about women students and some thoughts about teachers who teach in a women's college. but both are, according to her, indivisible. That is, there is an ethical and intellectual contract between students and their teachers. Here, university education implies an ethical and intellectual contract between teacher and student. Although this is unwritten, one must look into it if the education one receives is poor, cheap, and depersonalized. Second paragraph. The first thing I want to say to you who are students is that you cannot afford to think of being here to receive an education. You will do much better to think of yourselves as being here to claim one. One of the dictionary definitions of the verb to claim is to take as the rightful honor, to assert in the face of possible contradiction. To receive is to come into possession of, to act as receptacle or container for, to accept as authoritative or true. The difference is that between acting and being acted upon, and for women, it can literally mean the difference between life and death. Here, Rich's first argument is that students must claim an education rather than receive it. She then differentiates to receive and to claim. She cites a dictionary definition of claim as to take as rightful honor, to assert in the face of possible contradiction, and to receive means to act as receptacle or container for, to accept as authoritative or true. And apart from this, she added her own distinction here. It is like between acting and being acted upon. In the case of women, the matter is of life and death. So, the difference between to claim an education, to receive an education, is that one is acting and another is being acted upon. And for women, it can literally mean the difference between life and death. Next paragraph. One of the devastating weaknesses of university learning, of the store of knowledge and opinion that has been handed down through academic training, has been its almost total erasure of women's experience and thought from the curriculum, and its exclusion of women as members of the academic community. Today, with increasing numbers of women students in nearly every branch of higher learning, we still see very few women in the upper levels of faculty and administration in most institutions. Douglas College, it is in New Jersey, itself is a women's college and a university administered overwhelmingly by men, who in turn are answerable to the state legislature, again composed predominantly of men. But the most significant fact for you is that what you learn here, the very text you read, the lectures you hear, the way your studies are divided into categories and fragmented one from the other, all this reflects to a very large degree neither objective reality nor an accurate picture of the past, nor a group of rigorously tested observations about human behavior. What you can learn here, and I mean not only at Douglas but any college and any university, is how men have perceived and organized their experience, their history, their ideas of social relationships, good and evil, sickness and health, etc. When you read or hear about great issues, major texts, the mainstream of Western thought, you are hearing about what men, above all white men, in their male subjectivity have decided is important. So, here in this paragraph, pretty lengthy paragraph, Adrienne Rich says, or she believes that one of the devastating weaknesses of the university learning has been its almost total erasure or total removal of women's experience and thought from the curriculum and its exclusion of women as members of the academic community. Although nowadays we see an increasing number of women in universities, there are still very few of those institutions that women take part of as faculty. She claims that everything one learns reflects how men have perceived history and experiences. One typically hears about what the white man has accomplished now. So that means it is about male subjectivity, especially of the white man. So we can see that a lot of gendered bias in education because men had perceived and organized and experienced their history, their social relationships, good and evil, and the like. So that is what are taught in colleges. Next paragraph. Black and other minority peoples have for some time recognized that their racial and ethnic experience was not accounted for in the studies broadly labeled human, and that even the sciences can be racist. For many reasons, it has been more difficult for women to comprehend our exclusion and to realize that even the sciences can be sexist. For one thing, it is only within the last 100 years that higher education has grudgingly been opened up. Grudge means hated, been opened up to women at all, even to white middle class women. And many of us have found ourselves poring eagerly over books with titles like The Descent of Man, Man and His Symbols, Irrational Man, The Phenomenon of Man, The Future of Man, Man and the Machine, From Man to Man, May Man Prevail, Man, Science and Society, or One Dimension Man. Books pretending to describe a human reality that does not include over one half the human species. So, in this paragraph, Adrienne Rich says that, of course, the curriculum is gender biased. She said before in the previous paragraph, and here she says that even science can be racist and sexist. It is only within the last 100 years that higher education has been opened up to women. The books we study have names like The Descent of Man, Man and His Symbols, The Future of Man, Man and Machine, and the like. So these books pretend to describe a human reality that does not include over one half of the human species. That means it doesn't include or exclude women and other marginalized sections of society. So here we have to know about the background in which Rich had delivered the speech. So we have to know about the feminist movement, especially the second wave. Feminist movement, also known as the women's liberation movement or the women's movement or simply feminism, it refers to a series of political campaigns for reforms on issues such as reproductive rights, domestic violence, maternity leave, equal pay, women's suffrage, sexual harassment, and sexual violence, all of which fall under the label of feminism and feminist movement. And it has gone through three waves in the Western world. First wave feminism was oriented around the station of middle or upper class white women and involved suffrage and political equality, whereas second wave feminism attempted to further combat social and cultural inequalities. Third wave feminism is continuing to address the financial, social, cultural inequalities and includes renewed campaigning for greater influence of women in politics and media. And we have fourth wave feminism too. So my uh, here the focus is on second wave feminism. So the second wave feminism began in the early 1960s in the United States and eventually spread throughout the Western world and beyond. And it lasted till the 1980s. As I told you before, first wave feminists focused mainly on suffrage and overturned legal obstacles to gender equality. Second wave feminism drew attention to domestic violence and marital rape issues, establishment of rape crisis and battered women's shelters, and changes in custody and divorce law. Its major effort was the attempted passage of Equal Rights Amendment. Then in 1960s, the Food and Drug Administration approved the combined oral contraceptive pill, which was made available in 61. And Betty Friedan's the feminine mystic is credited with having begun second wave feminism. So let me stop for the time being and we will continue with the next part in the next class. Thank you.